The new Quinnipiac men's head basketball coach made his debut this weekend against two Ivy League opponents. Did the team come away successful? Next, the Quinnipiac rugby team advances to the NIRA semifinals, but the opponent is all too familiar. Plus, a take on the top 3 players in all of fall sports. Don't go anywhere. Bobcat Breakdown is just getting started. Hello and welcome to Bobcat Breakdown. I'm Katie O'Keefe, and tonight Sierra Goodwill and Ryan Chichester are on the desk to look at some final tournament play in fall sports and the latest action in winter sports. Sierra, Ryan, how are you feeling about tonight's topics?
I'm feeling good, ready to get started.
I'm feeling pretty good as well. Thank you for asking.
Great, so let's jump right into it. The Quinnipiac men's basketball team took it to the court this weekend, and Saturday the team secured a win against Dartmouth, but fell short to Brown Monday. So guys, given the staggered start, what are the takeaways from these two games? Sierra, let's start with you.
Well, I think the first thing I noticed is Shays Daniels needs to play win in order for this team to win. You saw it in Dartmouth, the first game on Saturday. He had a good game, 21 points, 7 rebounds, but when Dartmouth started to make their run is when Shays Daniels was on the bench with his third foul. So Bundu, when he comes in the game for Shays, you're not losing anything on defense. You might be gaining something on defense, but he is not as offensively skilled, obviously, as Shays Daniels. You're supposed to be your best player. And then against Brown, he only took 5 shots in the first half, took 10 shots the whole game. That's not enough looks for your best player, who's probably the only person on the team who's reliable to post up. So this team needs him to do well, and that's a lot of pressure for one player who can kind of get in his head sometimes.
Yeah, he needs to play a whole game. Shot just 1 of 6 in the opening game against Dartmouth. But someone they could look to is Cameron Young. Had 15 points against Brown last night. Shot 50% from the field. Had some troubles from the foul line, but then again, everyone on the Bobcats did last night. But again, high percentage shots. He's a guard that can post up and maybe relieve some of the double teams that come from Shays Daniels on the block. So one takeaway for me was Cameron Young was definitely a positive.
And I think it's easy to forget this after an exciting win on Saturday, but this is a rebuilding year. As much as this is a brand new start for the coaching staff and the team, and the chemistry is still trying to be made, Baker Dunleavy is learning how to be a head coach. He's never been a head coach before, so obviously he has to look at himself, see what he did right, what he did wrong, what he thinks he can do better. So there's not only pressure on these teammates to kind of gel and form a new identity, it's a completely blank slate.
But Sierra, they won the first game. They're going to win the MAC. No, but the main takeaway here is that there isn't much to take away.
Right.
It's the first 2 games of the season. We have a first-year head coach, a really young team. Rich Kelly has shown that he's a little inexperienced. Why wouldn't he be a true freshman at the point guard position? But he's also shown signs of maturing. So, yeah, not much to take away.
I agree.
So obviously there was clear excitement from the team and the fans this weekend, but was the win against Dartmouth overhyped? Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Well, again, like I said about the takeaways, there wasn't much of a takeaway. I don't think this was overhyped. I don't think it was underhyped. It was, we'll call it even hyped. So it was, a big win for the first game to show the Quinnipiac crowd, which was a little bigger than usual and a little more boisterous, to show them that this is a new era. We're going to do things a little differently. There's a different culture and attitude around here. But in terms of on the court, it was a great win against Dartmouth. But again, opening day, Dartmouth didn't have their best scorer in Evan Boudreau. I think he transferred out. So plenty of positives to take away, but I'm not, losing my shoes over it.
Right. I disagree with you a little bit because I do think you need to hype this win up for a team like the Quinnipiac men's basketball team who has a history of getting down on themselves. Last year, obviously, it was a whole different situation. Who knows what was going on behind the scenes? There was tension in the locker room, whatever, but they didn't have the best attitude. So if they win a close game, show resiliency late in a game, that's something to get excited over because that is kind of new territory for this team. So like you said, it was a big crowd, new era, kind of got a whole new mindset, not just for the team, but also for the Quinnipiac community to say, oh, maybe this is a team that will give us something to root for this year. So I don't think it was underhyped. I think that you got to celebrate a win because who knows how many will come.
good point.
Sierra, I completely agree with you, but now Quinnipiac travels south to Liberty University to compete in the Paradise Jam tournament against some very talented teams. So Sierra, do you think that Quinnipiac can keep up with those other teams and win some games?
I think that they can win a game. I think that if they do win a game, they'll win the third game. They play Colorado the first game. That's going to be a loss. And then they win the loser of either Drake or Wake Forest, and I can't see them winning either of those games either. Just those teams have so much more experience in tournaments like this and playing high caliber teams. But on the other side of the bracket, there's Drexel, Liberty, Houston, Mercer, and the bottom half, the bottom two of those teams, yeah, I can see them taking away a win. I mean, Isaiah Washington has experience playing against tough competition coming from Penn State. He's played great the first two games. And even like a similar tournament last year, this team played well against Gonzaga, Seton Hall, and beat Indiana State. So maybe if they can pull out whatever they were feeling last year in a similar tournament, they can win the third game, I think.
I think they can. I don't necessarily think they will. You know, we've talked to Coach Dunleavy after the game last night, and he talked about how it's not really about the wins right now. This is an opportunity for these teams to go out of town, you know, spend the night together in a hotel, really bond on stuff away from the court, and that's what this trip is going to be about for them. It's not necessarily about the wins and losses. They're playing teams that are just better than them right now, and that's okay. This is a young team, an inexperienced team. They're going to get the experience of traveling on the road together and playing a bunch of games at once, which means some other guys that don't play as much are going to get in. Maybe Aaron Robinson gets some time with 3 games in 3 days.
Yeah, I was surprised not to see him at all in the first 2 games, but he'll definitely need some fresh legs with 3 games in 3 days. So
yeah, I'd be tired out there.
Yeah.
Now, aside from the excitement that is men's basketball, Quinnipiac women's rugby team is still battling in tournament play as they face Central Washington for the third time this season. And obviously, any Quinnipiac and Central Washington matchup is one to watch, as the two now have a battling back-and-forth history. The Bobcats won in their second season matchup, so the question is, can Quinnipiac beat Central Washington twice in one season? Sierra?
Why not? I mean, this team has given us no reason to doubt their capabilities in the past. They are 2-time defending national champions. They steamroll all of their opponents. Alona Mar, Flora Poole were on fire in the quarterfinals. They showed no signs of slowing down, but it's not just offensively. Jessica Marichich, excuse me if I did not pronounce your last name right, just became the first player in program history to have 200 tackles. They're doing it all over the field. It's not just their offense. We preach on how many points they score, but this is such a well-rounded team. They're confident. They have a coach who believes in them. Why not?
I think it's funny that we're asking if we can, the Bobcats can beat the same team twice in one season. They won 2 national championships in 2 seasons. This is clearly an experienced team that is, yes, they've had some trouble with Central Washington in the past, but they've also beaten them in the past. They've lost to them each time the last 3 years, but again, they've also won the last 2 NIRA championships. They throttled Central Washington on their way to their first national championship, 46-24, as there's a fly in here, with Central Washington as the #1 seed. So I think they're going to, smother Central Washington like this fly is right in my face, and they're going to come away with a win.
It's hard to disagree.
Well, if anything, it will definitely be an intense game. But now we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, a holiday-themed analysis of the Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team. Stay with us.
Bobcat Breakdown, presented by the Quinnipiac Bobcats Sports Network.
We are your source for debate.
Did they make the playoffs last year, Tom Jenkins?
When it clicks, it clicks.
We dissect Quinnipiac athletics on a scale you've never seen before.
With Tobia, it almost looks like she's reaching a little bit.
Plus, we bring in the biggest names surrounding college sports.
We are live here at the Times Union Center with Jay Billis.
And of course, some comedy.
But you can only have so much arena food.
I think you're crazy.
Bobcat Breakdown, Tuesdays at 9:30.
Coming up on #that, we talk about some fun events around Quinnipiac's campus.
And we talk about some weird news that's been discussed around Twitter.
All that and more, we are your source for Quinnipiac's entertainment news.
Hello, and tonight on Sandwich News, we will determine what makes a good sandwich and a bad sandwich. First, the standard sandwich. Uninspired, and frankly, a little gross. But we have here a Ray and Mike sandwich, the Cadillac of sandwiches. And if you want one, well, come on down to Ray and Mike's at 3030 Whitney Ave, Hamden, Connecticut. Open every day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. QCash is accepted. Now that's a sandwich.
Whether you're on the quad, in your room,
or heading to class,
tune in to Q30 News.
For stories by student journalists you can trust.
We are covering the latest here on campus and in surrounding areas.
Get the news you need to know every Wednesday night.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you are noticing this colder weather because that means Thanksgiving is just around the corner. I know I'm excited. So tonight, we will take a special holiday look at the men's ice hockey team. Now, despite the team struggling with their current 4-game losing streak, what should the Bobcats be thankful for so far this season?
You can start us off, Ryan.
All right, I will. I think they should be thankful for this goaltending duo of Andrew Shortridge and Keith Petruzzelli, the freshman, who's come along nicely. And you know, you look at the stat sheet and it doesn't really jump off at you. His save percentage is under 900, but still, you look at the defense, there's some gaping holes. They've had to face a lot of shots. They're shorthanded a lot so far this season. So if you look at the goaltending, they should be losing games by even more than they are. And it's easy to not realize that. The team's given up 9 goals in the last 2 games, but I'm not putting a lot of that on the goaltenders. I'm putting it on the defense and their inability to block shots in traffic and create turnovers. They have not been good on the back check. So goaltenders they should be thankful for, because without them this would be an even more miserable Thanksgiving than it's shaping up to be with this 0-4 start in ECAC play.
I think every player on this men's ice hockey team, when they're sitting at the Thanksgiving Day dinner table, should say that they're thankful for their head coach, Rand Pecknold, because this is a guy who has over 470 career wins, good for 5th most among all of active Division I coaches. If there's anyone who knows how to change the attitude and the downward spiral of a team, it's him. He's going to whip his team into shape. There's no reason that he was chosen to be on the U.S. men's national coaching staff for a reason. He's a great coach, and he's the guy that they need to lead out of a 4-game slump. I mean, it's the first time they've ever lost 4 straight conference games to start the season. But if you're going to put anyone in charge of bringing them back from that, you want it to be Rand Pecknold.
But again, resumes only go so far. In the scheme of things right now, they're winless in conference play. It's never happened before. So coaching is great, but they need to start executing on the ice.
I think we're going to talk about what they need to actually start doing that in our next topic.
Exactly. So now, given what the team is thankful for, what will the team's Black Friday shopping list look like in the upcoming weeks? Sierra, start us off.
So Black Friday shopping is a great thing. I love Black Friday shopping. I'll be doing it myself. But for the men's ice hockey team, they need to shop for a scoring forward. Can anyone buy Sam Manis back? Because that's who they need. Someone like him who, when you're down or when you're tied late in a game, you give the puck to him, you find him in his sweet spot, and he will find the back of the net without a doubt. They have forwards like Alex Whalen, Chase Prisky, Odin Tufta, who are doing all they can, but they're not natural goal scorers. They find their teammates, they score a couple goals themselves, but they need a guy like Sam Manis who is just without a doubt going to give you a goal.
Well, unless Sam Manis does a Billy Madison and comes back to school, I don't think they're going to get that. But I'm going to look at the other side of the ice and the defense. I've mentioned it before, 9 goals in the last 2 games. When your offense scores 2 goals in the first 3.5 minutes of a game, which they just did a couple nights ago, you should be able to win that game. But then they give up goals in bunches. 2 goals within a 3-minute period in the second period and the third period in that game after building that quickly against RPI, and they dropped that one. 75% on the penalty kill. That's second to last in the ECAC. They're putting themselves shorthanded way too much, and to me that shows that they're a step behind and they're committing penalties to try to pull their way back in. They allowed 2 power play goals last game against Union. The power play goal by Cornell early in ECAC play was the difference. They've given up at least 4 goals in 3 of their 4 conference losses. The defense has to pick up, or they're in serious trouble.
Another thing they need that they might actually be able to find on the shelves is new pucks. They have 0 puck luck this season. There have been a few plays this season where Quinnipiac has literally lost the game because of a bad bounce in favor of the other team. You just saw it on the screen a little bit earlier. Cornell's game-winning goal was a weird bounce that no one knew where the puck was, and it bounced out over Quinnipiac's goalie's shoulder, and they won the game. That's unfortunate. You can't do much about that other than be better and not be able to put yourselves in positions where you lose on a bad bounce, but they should find some new pucks on the shelf.
Great teams recover from that stuff.
That's true. Looks like they don't have the resiliency that they have in the past.
Well, it looks like the team has a lot of expensive items on their list, but with great reputation comes great expectations. Speaking of which, the team has been looking for their grand marshal player. In other words, someone to rely on and lead the team in their parade to victories. So Sierra, in your eyes, who is that player for this team?
So the person that I choose to be leading the team down on Thanksgiving Day parade is Odin Tufto. And I know he's a freshman, so people might not look to him as a natural leader because he's young. But he leads the team in points with 10, but 3 of those are goals, 7 of those are assists. He's especially good at finding his open teammates. He sees the ice really well, and the reason why I think he would lead the parade is because he makes all the people behind him or next to him look really good. So I think he should be the one to lead the team.
Well, like normal, I'm going to go complete opposite of you and go to a senior who's a natural leader, been here 4 years. How about Bo Pieper? He's entered the season, played 120 games in his career. That's second most in Division I history. He's also played every game this season. He's got the longest active streak in games played. So if you're looking for someone to lead, why not follow someone who's out there all the time? And he's got the name, Bo Pieper. Sounds like a boxer.
I really think we just
almost
chose the 2 players with the coolest names on the team.
Maybe, but he sounds like a boxer. He's got, boxers come out of the tunnel with that entourage behind him. He's leading the parade behind him, and he's got a couple goals this year. So it's more than just showing up on the ice and playing these games. He's producing on the ice. Someone that Rand Pecknold can always count on to be out there, even if he's a little banged up. That's exactly who you need to be leading this team. Don't just look at the stat sheet. Look at the workload.
I agree.
Ryan, I got to agree with you on that one. You got to build up your leaders from the start. But now we will have to wrap up this year's Thanksgiving segment for a quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss the game of the week and the top 3 fall players. All that next.
Hello, and tonight on Sandwich News, we will determine what makes a good sandwich and a bad sandwich. First, the standard sandwich. Uninspired and frankly, a little gross. But we have here a Ray and Mike sandwich, the Cadillac of sandwiches. And if you want one, well, come on down to Ray and Mike's at 3030 Whitney Ave, Hamden, Connecticut. Open every day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. QCash is accepted. Now that's a sandwich.
Bobcat Breakdown presented by the Quinnipiac Bobcats Sports Network.
We are your source for debate.
Did they make the playoffs last year, Tom Jenkins?
When it clicks, it clicks.
We dissect Quinnipiac athletics on a scale you've never seen before.
With Tobia, it almost looks like she's reaching a little bit.
Plus, we bring in the biggest names surrounding college sports.
We are live here at the Times Union Center with Jay Billis.
And of course, some comedy.
But you can only have so much arena food.
I think you're crazy. Bobcat Breakdown.
Tuesdays at 9:30.
Whether you're on the quad,
in your room,
or heading to class,
tune in to Q30 News.
For stories by student journalists you can trust.
We are covering the latest here on campus and in surrounding areas.
Get the news you need to know every Wednesday night.
This is Sports Pause.
Are you concerned with the 0-2 start for this team?
Right here, top of the circle, again, rips it past the Jasper's goalie.
What will breaking the record mean for the program himself? I mean, 138 wins.
There's the tough shot. What a nice play by Mikey Dixon.
He's good in transition. Just a really dynamic scorer he can create for himself.
And now, Emma, it's time for the top 5 plays of the week.
Glad to have you all still with us as we are about to talk about this week's Game of the Week. Guys, I believe this is not just the Game of the Week, but one of the biggest games of the year. This Saturday, the Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team will face the Yale Bulldogs here in Hamden up at the TD Bank Sports Center. So guys, what are your expectations for this game?
A win. The Bobcats desperately need a win. They haven't had one in conference play all year. They're on their home ice. It's a rivalry game. I think this is exactly what the Bobcats need to maybe stir up some emotion a little bit and get them motivated to finally get in the win column in the ECAC. And it's not going to be the biggest home crowd because of Thanksgiving break. There might not be a lot of students here, but I think it's going to be loud enough to propel them to play some defense and get a victory.
See, I think that's exactly why Yale is going to win this game. There's so much hype around the Quinnipiac-Yale game, and usually students are on their computers 5 minutes before the tickets go on sale. This year, people were able to get tickets 10, 15, 20 minutes after they went on sale, which is unheard of.
But they still got the tickets, didn't they?
They bought the tickets, but a lot of people aren't going to go to the game because they don't want to stay through Thanksgiving Day break. And I think that mentally, for that men's ice hockey team, that's kind of going to throw them off just because there's so much hype. Freshmen coming in on the men's ice hockey team, probably talked about when they were being recruited, about how much hype is around that game. So I think that's going to play a huge factor, and the fact that Yale is better this year so far. Yale has 6 points in conference. Quinnipiac's the only team in the ECAC with 0 points. Yale has 3 wins over good teams like St. Lawrence, who Quinnipiac perennially struggles with. So I think there's no direction that is pointing us in a Quinnipiac win. You've talked about the struggles on defense. We've talked about how they don't have a natural born scorer. So I really don't think that there's anything working in Quinnipiac's favor right now to say that they're going to win this game.
Well, maybe the lessons of the burden of expectations. Maybe the absence of a loud and raucous student section will kind of lessen those expectations and lessen that hype, like you said. Maybe that's actually what the Bobcats need right now. They seem to be a team that's kind of fallen under the weight of their own expectations early in conference play.
But recently in history, when the crowd is into it and it's a packed house, Quinnipiac has won the last couple games at home against Yale. They feed off that energy, and I think even now, with them losing 4 straight games, the crowd is dwindling, and I think that's getting in their heads, and I think that is going to be a really underrated part of this game, and I just don't see the Bobcats getting on track because Yale's going to be ready.
The crowd in the stands needs to be the last thing on their mind. They need to be focused on the product on the ice. Win some games, and the crowd will come back.
That's right.
But before we go on to the next question, Ryan, Sierra, will I see you 2 at the game? I know I'm going to be there.
I'll be there.
I'll be at Chili's in Wallingford if anyone wants to get a post-game meal. I'll cook you up with an old-timer with cheese.
All right. Well, even though the holiday break does start on Friday, the game is sold out. So the men on skates will have that home arena advantage. But before we think too far ahead, let's go back to fall sports and hear Q30's own Mike Dalton on his take on the top 3 players across all of fall sports.
Thanks, Katie. Moving on to number 3, we have Layla Scott. The rugby team is known for their size and strength, but not necessarily speed. Enter Layla Scott, the Oakland native who uses her speed to help her sprint down the sidelines so she's able to take it to the try zone or help move the ball forward by just outrunning her opponents. So far, Scott has recorded 6 tries. To put that in perspective, her 7 other freshman teammates don't even combine for 6 tries. Also, she's only a freshman, so for her to stand out on a team that has players like Alona Marr, Flora Poole, and Emily Roskopf, that's impressive. At number 2, it's Alona Marr. Keeping it on the topic of rugby, Alona Marr is the most valuable player on the rugby team. She's tall, she's fast, and she's as strong as an ox. Plus, she can play great offense and defense. Even Marr's presence on the field is bone-chilling. She's always among the top 2 players on the team in tries and assists every year. She's been at QU, plus she earned the M.A. Sorensen Award for being the best college player in the country in 2016 and is certain to be a finalist again this year. At number 1, we have Nadia Gill. This one was a no-brainer. Gill leads the women's soccer team in scoring for the 2nd straight year. She led the MAC in the regular season in points with 34 and goals with 10. She tied for 13th in the nation in points per game, 28th in the nation in assists per game, and 33rd in the nation in goals per game. Dave Clark may have found Gill to be frustrating at times, but Clark can't deny that the All-MAC first-team striker was a machine out on the pitch. Gill will leave some massive cleats to fill behind her as she will be graduating this upcoming spring. Well, that's my take on the top 5 fall sports athletes. Back to you, Katie.
Thank you, Mike. But guys, what do you think?
Well, I think that was a pretty good list, but on my list, I probably at number 3 would have added Will Passari from the men's soccer team. He was a stud on defense, kept this team in a lot of games, had arguably one of the biggest goals of the season for this Bobcats team, and he was just... They lost games in the beginning of the year, but by a small margin. I think he was a big part of that. He was a huge support in front of Chris Yakovitis, and the team really leaned on him all year long.
Let's give a little love to volleyball. Maria Pansari is a sophomore, getting her 2,000th assist already. She is on her way to maybe breaking the school record, which is somewhere around 4,500.
Right.
But, you know, the Bobcats have been injured, decimated by injuries. Elizabeth Clues, Jen Coffey, they both haven't really been there on the Bobcats front line, and Pansari is still putting up good sets for people that have come in like Kat Miller and Jamie Termato, and kept the Bobcats fairly competitive and led them to another MAC tournament berth just a couple days ago.
Passari and Pansari, I like it.
It's a tongue twister.
Ryan, I got to agree with you. Being a volleyball fan myself, I think that Maria Pansari is able to work with any group of girls there on the front line, so she's definitely a star player to mention for this. But back to rugby for a second. Does Central Washington have an unfair advantage given that they were given a bye in the quarterfinals?
So this is a kind of interesting situation. Central Washington is the 3 seed, Quinnipiac's the 2 seed, and Central Washington had a bye when the other teams didn't. Is that an advantage? Yes, because you're less tired, but is it unfair? I can't say it is because that's sports. And when I think of that, I think of the NCAA tournament, March Madness, when teams get underseeded, overseeded, and they're angry about their seeding, and they play tough teams earlier in the bracket than they think that they should have. And I just think that that's sports, and I think that the best teams are going to prevail no matter what. And I think Quinnipiac Rugby has shown that they are a very dominant team, so if playing one extra game is the reason they don't win the national championship, then maybe they didn't deserve to win it.
Okay, well, let's not go that far. Let's take a look at how the tournament's still set up right now. You can be overseeded and underseeded in an NCAA tournament, and you still play the same amount of games and have to beat the same amount of teams. This is a 3 seed getting a bye over a 2 seed and a 1 seed. Let's not forget about top seeded Dartmouth, who doesn't get a bye. I don't understand. It's simple mathematics to me. 1 and 2 are better numbers than 3. That's as simple as it comes down to.
But say you're a 12 seed in the NCAA tournament, and then when you think you should have been a 10 seed, there's a huge difference in strength of opponent that plays a huge factor.
Sarah, that's sorting out 68 teams. This is a tournament of 7 teams. It should not be that hard. I can't understand why Central Washington
I said it was an advantage. I just think that if you're the best team, you're the best team, and you're going to win.
Would you rather play at home, or would you rather be fully rested?
Well, now as always, to end the show, we have some final roars. Ryan, take it away.
Thank you, I will. The Quinnipiac men's basketball team suffered their first loss of the young season last night, a 79-72 loss to a Brown team who was picked last in the Ivy League preseason poll. It was an ugly loss with 14 missed free throws and 14 turnovers for the Bobcats, but let's not overlook the bigger picture. Freshman point guard Rich Kelly found his way in the second half after a rough start to the game and finished with 14 points and 8 assists. First-year starter Cameron Young showed what he can do on the offensive end as well, finishing with 15 points on the night. The black and white result of the game was hardly appealing, but Baker Dunleavy's group definitely has a pulse. Speaking of Dunleavy, Monday night serves as an important reminder that the early season results should not be a reason for panic. Welcome to the nature of a committed rebuild. It may hurt at first, but it gets better. Dunleavy was brought here specifically to build a contender, and not right away. That's just not realistic. Saturday's win to open the season was exciting for sure, but it wouldn't be fair to use it as an expectation for the rest of the young season. There's work to be done, and to borrow the mantra from the 76ers just down the road from Dunleavy's alma mater in Villanova, we have to trust the process.
Don't panic. Quinnipiac women's basketball is 0-2 to start the season and will most likely be 0-3 since its next opponent is 9th-ranked Ohio State. But seriously, there is no need to fret. The Bobcats' out-of-conference schedule started with a successful Big Ten team in Iowa, then number 16 Missouri. And more tough contests against teams like Dayton, Michigan State, and Princeton are still on the horizon. It's not about looking at the win and loss column right now. It's about finding their identity without Adeline Martucci and Morgan Mans and giving them experience playing against NCAA tournament caliber teams. I can assure you that when conference play rolls around, the Bobcats will undoubtedly be the most dominant team in the MAC and more than likely earn another bid to the big dance. So I know it might seem shocking to see all those L's on the women's basketball team's schedule after their memorable Sweet 16 run last season. I truly don't think that is anything to worry about or any indication that this team will struggle the rest of the season.
Now this season was definitely one to learn from for the Quinnipiac women women's volleyball team, as their starting lineup was constantly changing due to injuries and the loss of talent due to last year's graduation. Yet, despite the new dynamic, the Bobcats currently hold a spot in the MAC tournament and even found some new talent, including Morgan Sherwin and Haley Anderson. The coaching staff found Sherwin's greatest talent hitting right side, while Anderson took care of digs in the back row along sophomore libero Alejandra Rodriguez. The front row was then built up by outside hitter Natalie Aleko and middle hitter Kaylee Oates, since Jen Coffey and Elizabeth Cluse were out of play for most of the season. Sophomore setter Maria Pansari also used the season to build up, as she worked with a variety of combinations of front row attackers, making her just that more talented to work with any lineup handed her way. Personally, I think this season was successful in building up a more dynamic team, and I have no doubt that the hard work and configuration of players will have a positive impact on the Bobcats in the 2018 season. It will definitely be something to watch, and I'm very excited to see the girls improve. And that concludes this episode of Bobcat Breakdown. Thank you for joining us, and mark your calendars for next week's show, for our next show after Thanksgiving. But before you go, find us on Twitter at Q30 Sports and get all the latest updates on our website at Q30TV.com. For Sierra Goodwill and Brian Chichester and our entire crew, I'm Katie O'Keefe. Have a great night.